So I'll admit, I've never been the biggest Carson Wentz fan since he came out of college. I thought when he got drafted second overall out of North Dakota State that it wasn't a good move for the Philadelphia Eagles, and he proved me wrong. He had an MVP caliber season, even though he ended up being hurt during the playoff run. They win a Super Bowl in a season that he was the starter. And really, the only reason he got kicked out of Philly was because of injuries. He never was healthy after that MVP season. He never was the guy anymore that we saw in, 2015, 2016? He never was that guy. But what he did this past season, and again, it was a season in which I did not think he was going to do anything good at all. I thought he was going to be a below-average quarterback, and a lot of those assumptions were correct after the first 3 games of the season where he didn't look good. The Colts as a team didn't look good with an 0-3 record to start the season against 3 teams who, even though the Rams won the Super Bowl at that moment, they weren't considered the team that was going to be winning the Super Bowl. The Seahawks didn't make the playoffs, and the Tennessee Titans are probably the worst number 1 seed that we've seen in a long, 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 long time. Finishing 9-8, even with the 2 losses at the end of the season to 2 below-average teams in the Jaguars and the Raiders, they still did some things last year that I don't think can just go, just be thrown out the window. They won big games down, during the middle of the season, and Carson Wentz, with 27 touchdowns and 7 interceptions, played a lot better than people are going to try to make it seem. And if I'm a Colts fan, I just don't understand why everything gets shouldered on Carson Wentz for, negative reasons. When you look at it, I don't think Michael Pittman Jr. has over 1,000 yards last year without Carson Wentz throwing him the ball. And this team around Carson Wentz, yes, they have Jonathan Taylor. Cool. What has having the best running back in the league ever done for any team in the past 15 years? What has it done? It doesn't do much anymore. They didn't have a tight end for Carson Wentz to throw to. They didn't have the best protection in the world last year, even with an offensive line that everyone touts as the greatest in the NFL. And defensively, yeah, they were a top 10 scoring defense, but they didn't have a single guy with double-digit sacks. They only had 2 that had more than 5 sacks last year. So, why is everything just Carson Wentz? Why is everything just we need to put Carson Wentz out of Indianapolis? Carson Wentz led about half of the games last year for the Colts where they had no turnovers, and he wasn't a below average quarterback. I think at this point there's probably 10 to 15 quarterbacks that you could say you could win a Super Bowl with. Carson Wentz is one of those quarterbacks, and Indianapolis just traded him for a 2nd-round pick and 2 third-round picks. Now, if you're the Washington Commanders, you have now an offense that consists of Wentz. You have Antonio Gibson, who just had a 1,000-yard rushing season. You have a great secondary running back with J.D. McKissick out of the backfield who can catch passes and run it if you need to. You've got a 1,000-yard receiver between Terry McLaurin. You've got a young up-and-coming tight end in Logan Thomas, who even though he missed a lot of the season last year, he looks like he's going to be one of the next good tight ends in the league. An offensive line that's not good, but hopefully it's improving. And the defense that is looking to bounce back from a down year last year after they won the division the previous year. And, I'm not one for just major predictions 6 months out from the season, but I really think the Colts are going to be one of the worst teams in the AFC next year because, A, you traded a guy who I believe is one of the 10 to 15 guys you could win a Super Bowl with at the quarterback position. B, I don't know who you're replacing him with at this point because neither Derek Carr, Jimmy Garoppolo, any of the guys in the draft this year, Jordan Love, any quarterback that you could think of right now as a replacement for Carson Wentz in Indianapolis, there's not a single guy who you could say could take this team now and win a Super Bowl within the next 1 to 2 seasons because the Colts aren't really rebuilding. They have a defense built to win now. They have a running back and wide receiver duo ready to win now. They don't have a great tight end. They don't have great weapons outside of Pittman and Taylor. But this team is built to win now. And obviously they're built to win now if they're just going to trade Carson Wentz after one not-so-spectacular season. And I get it. As a Texans fan, I hate missing the playoffs. I hate being the bottom feeder of not only the conference, but the division. I hate being the worst team in our division. I hate looking up at the Colts and the Titans and the fucking Jaguars. Even though we won more games than them, it's like they have Trevor Lawrence, so it's like they're a better team than us. I just don't see how, if you're a Colts fan, you can really actually say that this deserved to happen to Carson Wentz. Yes, he struggled in the last 2 games of the season. Name a team who hasn't had a disappointing end to the season. Every team has had a disappointing end to the season. And guess what? 31 teams didn't win the Super Bowl last year. You're telling me if Carson Wentz, if they did make the wild card game last year and they lose in the first round to the Cincinnati Bengals, that just means that Carson Wentz deserves to keep his job? What are you talking about at that point? 31 teams did not win the Super Bowl last year. There's 5 or 6 teams that probably could have and came up short. There's a reason that none of those teams, the Packers, even though the Buccaneers don't count because Tom Brady retired, but, teams that were close last year, the Bengals, the Packers, the 49ers. They made the most of the guy that they got, and the 49ers now, they actually are in a decent position to move on from their quarterback, because this has been, they made a Super Bowl with Garoppolo. They made a couple conference championships with Jimmy Garoppolo. The Carson Wentz Indianapolis Colts, he was never given enough time to actually implement himself into this offense and be as effective as possible. And even in saying that, he threw for over 3,500 yards, had 27 touchdowns to only 7 interceptions, with an offense who, outside of Jonathan Taylor and Michael Pittman, did not have a single reliable option. And then he gets traded, and he's made the scapegoat by Jim Irsay in that front office. Listen, before Peyton Manning, the Indianapolis Colts were shit. After Peyton Manning, the Indianapolis Colts have been shit. And as long as Jim Irsay is making moves like this, the Indianapolis Colts are always going to be shit. And as a Texans fan, I love it.